about what happened with Red, and he helps Yellow by telling him about the legendary stones underneath the Vermilion Sea, being the Leaf, Fire, Water, and Thunder stones. Although they may sound like regular evolution stones, the ones hidden under the sea do not disappear after usage, making them very sought after. In fact, this legend was thought to be a myth until Red's Poliwhirl evolved into a Poliwrath, proving the legend true. After hearing about these powerful stones, Yellow wants to search for them in hopes of greater power. So Yellow goes out to sea with a floaty made by Caterpie's string. While searching though, his team ends up getting surrounded by a bunch of tentacle, and eventually a massive tentacle appears, dragging Yellow underwater. At first he struggles, but he realizes that Tentacle only did this to direct Yellow to help its trapped baby. So Yellow and his Pokemon work together to free the baby. But Yellow's a human, and humans don't do well underwater, so he passes out from no oxygen. And man, these protagonists really can't catch a break when it comes to the water. And small spoilers for the future, this isn't going to be the only time. When Yellow wakes up, he's still underwater, but now inside of a special dome, all thanks to the Tentacruel and Tentacool, who took Yellow to where the legendary stones reside. But only one stone is remaining, being the Leaf Stone. Now returning back to land, Yellow tells the fan club president about his findings, and it makes him think that the only person who would have been able to steal the stones would have to be a great trainer, but also someone who wanted to evolve an electric, water, and fire Pokemon. Which then makes Yellow come to a realization that Eevee is a Pokemon that represents these types, and with Eevee being such a rare Pokemon, it may very well have just been Red who got the stones. Let's take a break from Yellow now and check in on Green, who's floating in the sky thinking it might be time for her to make her entrance soon. Green eventually arrives at her destination, which is Bill's home, and she breaks in, apologizing to Professor Oak for breaking her promise, but this time it's for a really good cause. Bill's sleeping, but Green's not here for him. Instead, she's here to find the history and records of the Pokemon PC system. Bill wakes up and thinks Green's a burglar, so she has to tie him up and explain the situation, telling him he's probably going to be a target for the Elite Four since he got involved with the battle with Lorelei. Bill asks Green why she even knows this, and Green reveals not only did she bug Yellow's hat, she was also the one who sent Yellow on the quest. As it turns out, the Elite Four are her enemies as well. When the Kanto Trio split up 2 years ago, Green went on a search to find out who controlled the bird that kidnapped her, with one of the potential candidates being the Elite Four. Now Green wants to get into the serious business, being to take a look at the user data of the PC, which Bill says is illegal. But Green explains they need to do this to see if Red's alive, as he must have used the PC to replace his missing Pikachu, and the only way they can see if this is true is to check the PC information. So Bill decides to suck it up and take the risk, checking the data and confirming Green's theory to be true, as Red recently accessed his box and withdrew his Eevee, meaning he's still alive. Now all they have to do is check which center it was taken from, but they get attacked at the last second by a Hitmonlee, which confirms Green's other theory of Bill being a target. So he and Green chase after the Hitmonlee. Whilst chasing, Green checks her laptop to see Yellow's current location, which is still at Vermilion City. And the reason for that is that Yellow doesn't have a way to cross the sea now, with the S.S. Anne being destroyed. And even when Yellow searched for water Pokemon, all he could find were Tentacool. So in the meanwhile, Yellow's decided to continue training, trying to master the move Substitute, when suddenly a massive wave appears, washing away the clone. Also on the wave though was a surfer who crashes into the shore in pain. Yellow helps him out by making a cast, and the surfer thanks him, explaining he was actually practicing for a surfing contest where the winner wins a Dragonair. Yellow is interested in the idea of it, so the surfer gives Yellow his Slowpoke to take his place in the contest. Now we can head back to the chase, with Green and Bill managing to catch up with the Hitmonlee, but it bounces them away from Blastoise. Green notices that the Pokemon's trying to find them, as their trainer is currently present, but hidden away. So their best choice in action is to stay hidden and command Blastoise from afar, with Green's new device. What this device does exactly, we'll find out in a bit, as now it's time for the surfing contest. Before the contest begins, the announcer demonstrates the Dragonair's ability, but suddenly the Dragonair starts to cause a whirlpool, and a caped man appears on top of its head. This man being Lance, who gets the Dragonair to destroy part of the city with its Hyper Beam. Lance calls out to someone to show themselves, but he notices that they've already left, so he takes the Dragonair and begins to leave. Yellow chases after him with Doduo, giving the Slowpoke back to the swimmer. Now we once again return to Green, whose machine allows her to send commands in bubbles, and by hiding this bubble in a herd of Blastoise's bubbles, the instructions make it to Blastoise, who defeats the Hitmonlee. Green then tells Bill that they now have to go help Yellow, as this whole attack was a decoy to stop them from helping Yellow. Speaking of, Yellow is still chasing Lance along the shoreline, but the shore isn't long enough for Yellow to continue, so the only option they have is to catapult Pikachu towards Lance, whilst he and the rest of the team flow along with Caterpie's string. Lance notices this and asks Yellow and Pikachu why they're following him, and Yellow interrogates Lance on why he destroyed the city, with Lance replying what we already know, but now that Yellow followed him, he has to take him down. So the two get into battle, with Lance explaining his ideals to Yellow, that Pokemon shouldn't be kept as pets for humans, especially in a busy city like that. And worst of all humans must be destroyed apart from the elite. Lance then uses his power to control dragons and commands Dragonair to bring thunder and lightning. Pikachu tries to attack, but it gets easily taken down by Hyper Beam, and Lance catches on that this Pikachu must be the one Lorelei and Agatha are chasing, and that Yellow must be the one trying to stop the Elite Four. So, as a gift for his fellow members, he captures Pikachu and leaves Yellow stranded at sea. But Yellow has Pikachu use Substitute and have the clone attack Lance. The attack lands, but it just pisses him off, and he attacks Yellow and Pikachu with the intent to finish them. This attack leaves Yellow and Pikachu sinking into the ocean, and Yellow notices that Pikachu's double is still present and is repelling the water around it. With Yellow powerless, Pikachu takes the initiative, and Lance thinks he succeeded in taking down Yellow. But Yellow emerges from under the sea, now with the ability to surf with Pikachu's Substitute. They hit Lance with a blinding thunderbolt, causing the trainer to vanish, leaving Yellow and Pikachu with the thoughts of what Lance said about people and Pokemon. However, Yellow remembers the words Red once told him, and decides to follow his ideals, that people and Pokemon can always be friends. Earlier, we saw Blue give a letter to Pidgeot, and now we get to see what the contents of this letter was, as Pidgeot has arrived at Oak's lab. Inside the letter, Blue tells his grandfather that Yellow is on a mission tasked by Green, but more importantly, he's managed to locate the HQ of the Elite Four, being Ceres Island, and that's where he's heading now. We then head back to Yellow again, who's helping a Farfetch'd after its nesting place got disrupted by a bunch of Executor and Oddish. These said Pokemon are constantly on the move, whilst looking like they're a forest. Yellow contacts Oak with a laptop he received from Blue, and Oak explains they shouldn't be moving like that, unless they've sensed a natural disaster, or something unnatural of a similar scale. And at the same time, we see Lance has returned to Ceres Island, along with Lorelei and Agatha, as he prepares his dragon army for his attack. Blue's sister, otherwise known as Daisy, then appears, giving Oak some textbooks that he needed, and they both discuss on the current events, and that Yellow has a tough task ahead, but they both believe in him. Speaking of Yellow, he sets sail once again, and is now at Cinnabar Island, and he meets the same boy that Blue met 2 years ago. The boy is now a junior trainer, and he's gathering rocks in order to help his friend with training. Yellow's interested in the idea and follows along, until they reach a bridge above the volcano, and an old man is waiting for them. The boy then begins to throw rocks at the man, but he's protected by a speedy Silhouette and its spoon. The boy then starts throwing more rocks, this time aided by the man's Arcanine, who sets him on fire, similar to Blue's training. But once again, the attacks don't affect the man. The man thanks the boy, and Yellow finds his voice to be familiar. The man then invites Yellow to follow him, and they head for a lab hidden behind the gym. Here, this mysterious old man removes his disguise, revealing himself to be Blaine. He explains, because he never knows who's watching him, he wears a disguise. And if you're wondering about his mustache, well, he burned his real one off in training. Just then, they get a message from Brock, who informs the duo that he's seen Red at Mount Moon. Or at least he had seen Red, but he's no longer here. Everyone's confused to what he means, but he explains by showing them an ice sculpture in the same shape as Red. However, its back is hollow, meaning Red was once encased in ice, but managed to escape it. Blaine says something similar happened to Red and Blue in the Battle of Silphco, but they managed to escape with Charizard. So in this case, someone else must have come and helped Red. Suddenly, Misty hops on the call and tells everyone that Pewter City, Cerulean, are all currently under attack by an army of Pokemon. The Pokemon attacking the cities are all the same types as the Elite Four, but things go from bad to worse as the communication between gym leaders gets cut off, meaning everyone will have to fight without contact. Blaine tells Yellow that this may be bad, but it also gives them the opportunity to attack the Elite Four directly, as he's finally been able to locate their island. Yellow heads off first, but Blaine still has to stay behind and prepare an ally to accompany him, grabbing a Master Ball before heading to the island himself. As he approaches, he sees a silhouette, recognizing it to be Blue, who's also arrived at the island. The two head inside, but once they're there, they find out they're not alone, as Team Rocket's elite Triad is also here. Blue asks the Triad why they're here and how did they escape after Silphco, but Sabrina says they can discuss that later, as they have more guests arriving. Also on the island is of course the Elite Four, who have noticed the trespassers on their island. Well, in this case the Elite Three, as Bruno isn't present, which Lance queries about, and Lorelei tells him that Bruno is still searching for Red, claiming he wants to settle the battle between them. So Lance demands they call him back now. We then go to see what Bruno's doing, and he's doing exactly what Lorelei said. Bruno really wants to find Red and fulfill his wish of having a blood-rushing fight, reminiscing about the time they first met. In other words, we're finally getting a flashback of what happened to Red. So, at the start of this story, Red got a letter from the Elite Four to request a challenge under Bruno's name. And now Red has arrived, but he sees no one around, thinking he's been pranked. And just then, he notices something as the ground beneath him begins to shake. He dodges out of the way as the ground was actually Onyx's back. And Bruno appears, saying this was just a little test, praising his reflexes. However, he's not one for surprise attacks, formally challenging Red as Bruno of the Elite Four. Red doesn't decline the battle, but wonders what the Elite Four even is. Bruno, though, ignores Red's questions and begins their fight. The two trainers end up being quite equal, as Red is excited at the thought of having a serious fight after 2 years of nothing. Whilst they battle it out though, Lorelei and Agatha are menacingly watching over them. And the story decides, might as well have a flashback in a flashback, showing us a younger Lorelei trying to save her Pokemon from the pollution and industrial waste. Agatha then appears by her side and helps her, telling the young girl that she should join her in fighting against humans for the destruction that they've caused. Back to the battle, Bruno has fled underground, so Red chases after him using Venusaur's vines to trap Onyx. Bruno's a step ahead though, attacking Red from behind and dropping him even further down into Mount Moon. Bruno's about to rush Red, but he stops to allow a group of Diglett to pass through, explaining how they like to roam through Onyx's tunnels, going on to say that Pokemon can teach them about the interconnectedness of life, and how it's important to remember that, which is the exact opposite of what Lance believes. Right as the battle's about to continue, Bruno falls to his knees, shaking in pain, as Lorelei and Agatha appear, saying Bruno's words are foolish, and that people can never coexist with Pokemon, as they destroy the habitats of Pokemon, telling Red that they'll annihilate the human race, and only the elite trainers will be allowed to live. And to accomplish their goals, they'll use the Badge Energy Amplifier, showcasing its hidden 8th slot to Red. They then ask Red for the location of the last one, as the last one to see Giovanni was him, which is the true reason why they called him here. Red notices something's wrong with Bruno, but he can't help him right now due to being stuck in these tunnels. So he uses Aerodactyl to try escape, but he gets caught and interrogated. Red reveals he doesn't know where Giovanni or the Earth Badge are, so the villains ask him their next question, being will he join their side, as he has what it takes to be one of the elite himself. Red of course declines and tries to fight back, but with a controlled Bruno by their side, it's a 3-on-1. The group reveal that Red is too strong and a threat to their plans, so if he won't join them, they'll have to wipe him out, with Lorelei creating an ice voodoo doll of Red, trapping his wrists and ankles. They also do the same for Pikachu. Lorelei and Agatha don't want to see Red dying, so they leave him to Bruno to deal with. Red only has Pikachu left, but it can't move its body, and Red gets kicked directly by Hitmonlee, dropping him even further down into Mount Moon. Pikachu is about to chase after him, but Red tells him to stay away as his entire body is beginning to freeze over, asking the Pokemon to run away and find help, and so the Pokemon does exactly what Red says. Red loses his grip and falls down into the mountain, as part of his glove rips and floats away, and although he tries to keep going, Red gets completely frozen in ice. Pikachu then wakes us up from this flashback, and Yellow comforts the Pokemon. Suddenly, from overhead, Green and Bill appear. Yellow explains he made it to the island in the afternoon and was planning to hide until it got dark, which is now. Green says not to worry as she'll be joining the fight now, putting on a jacket. The three of them then make their way to the caves where everyone is, with Green creating a smokescreen cloud with the help of Horsey. They travel through the skies in order to avoid the Pokemon down below, and once they reach the entrance of the cave, Green has Yellow read the mind of her Clefable in order for them to find out who's inside the cave, as not to risk getting ambushed. Clefable says it hears the voices of people inside, saying that they're people that they've met before, so they head inside and meet with everyone else. So with the full gang now here, minus Red, everyone introduces themselves to each other, and the Team Rocket Triad explain they're also here to defeat the Elite Four, saying they managed to escape Silphco whilst it was collapsing, and now that they found out about the Elite Four, they can't let them take over the world that they're meant to take over. So in this case, they have a common enemy. Blue decides to accept the truth for his team, and Sabrina has the Alakazam make spoons, known as the Spoons of Destiny. She explains, since there are 8 of them, they'll split into groups of 2, with the Spoons of Destiny pairing them up with their best partner. The partners decided are Yellow and Blaine, Blue and Koga, and Green and Sabrina, but for Bill and Surge, their spoons don't bend. In Bill's case, it doesn't bend because he's scared to fight, but for Surge's case, it's because Red's not here, so Surge will be teaming up with Bill. So with the pairings decided, everyone splits up and makes their way to fight each of the Elite Four. The first pair we're following is Blue and Koga, who reminisce about their fight at Silphco, with Blue taking the chance to return Koga his Golbat. Koga uses the Golbat to project the images into its mouth, using Supersonic. This allows them to search for their enemy through supersonic waves, and the enemy that they found is an Arbok. Blue notes that this means that they're up against Agatha and wants to get to fighting, but Koga tells him not to worry as he threw a Shuriken Pokeball, creating an Arbok vs Arbok fight. Agatha commands her Arbok from out of sight, but Koga's skill as a trainer allows him to counter her strategies. Agatha's Arbok then uses Rock Slide, but mixed in with the rocks are stalactites, making any blunt hits become piercing blows. Everyone manages to dodge, but Koga's Golbat gets caught, and Blue has to save it. However, doing this gets his guard down and he gets hit by Gengar's Lick, who was hiding in the shadows. So, unfortunately for Blue, his eyes are now paralyzed. The rock slides continue to fall, creating a maze-like wall, separating the two trainers from each other. Blue is blind for now and has to rely on Golbat to guide him with Supersonic, but Agatha has a Golbat of her own, which counters the Supersonic waves. She then makes her appearance in front of Koga in order to have a proper snake battle, utilizing her Pokemon's special ability to change its markings and thus change its powers. Because of his special ability, Koga's on the back foot and begins to struggle, but he soon figures out a plan to stop the patterns. Agatha's Arbok then bites the tail of Koga's Arbok, seemingly finishing it off. He then tries to counter with Weezing and Muk's poison, but with a new marking, Arbok becomes immune to the poison and takes them down as well. As for Blue, he's not faring much better right now, but on the bright side, he knows that if he can get back to Koga, he can get his sight back. Koga also knows this and throws multiple Shuriken Pokeballs, which Agatha ignores. Koga then has his Arbok regenerate itself, which is its own special ability, mentioning how in the past Blue split the Pokemon in two but it still managed to recover. Agatha mentions a point though, that this only delays the inevitable as Blue would probably be finished off by now. And right on cue, her Golbat returns. But the Golbat that actually returns is Koga's and Blue has his sight back. Turns out, inside Koga's Shuriken Pokeballs held Pokemon holding Paralyze Hill, and one of them managed to reach Blue. Koga then has his Golbat bite him and spew the blood at Agatha's Arbok, preventing it from changing its markings and allowing Blue to finish the job of confusion, taking down Agatha. Koga is weak from losing so much blood, so Blue gives him a hand as they look for a way to escape the rocky maze. Now we go to our next pair, Sabrina and Green. These two stumble across a shrine-like rock, holstering a trainer badge. They're confused as why it's there, but a voice tells them that it's none of their business, as suddenly their wrists are linked together by ice shackles, meaning their foe is Lorelei. She warns them if their doll shatters, they'll shatter along with it, which is very unfair. She begins to attack for two, but with them being linked together, it's much harder to dodge the attacks. And to make matters worse, when it comes to Pokemon battling, the two can't work together either. Sabrina then notices that the attacks are being mainly aimed at Green, and Lorelei showcases that she actually managed to capture Green's Horsey, which she had sent before on a scouting mission, revealing she's actually been holding a grudge on Green since she got in her way back in the fight with Yellow. And once Green's guard is lowered, she attacks her with Jinx, knocking Green out. Lorelei hides the dolls inside of Cloyster, so Sabrina can't steal them, but she manages to take down the Cloyster with Mega Drain. Although this battle's getting interesting, we're gonna have to come back to it later, as now we'll be going to Bill and Surge. Surge explains to Bill that they were actually going to deal with the Elite Four way earlier by luring them out with the SS Ant, but a certain Straw Hat individual got in their way. Eventually, they reach a weird lake area with rocky bridges. Whilst they investigate the area, Bill slips and falls into the lake, noticing that it isn't water, instead it's more viscous, using Magikarp's Splash to hop out of the liquid. Surge then notices that Bill's shoes and cuffs have melted, meaning that the lake is very similar to Victory Ball's acid. The fighting maniac Bruno then appears, saying if they want to get through, they're gonna have to defeat him first in this extreme battleground, as the stone bridges are actually wild onyxes, meaning Bruno is also at risk while fighting him. He then challenges the duo to a battle, which Surge accepts, but once again we'll be leaving a battle behind, as we're gonna be moving to our next pair, which is Yellow and Blaine. The two look at Red's Pokedex, and Blaine explains that Oak added a new feature, allowing you to check Pikachu's emotions. Blaine checks it and the levels are high, noting that Pikachu might be close to remembering something important, bringing up the good point that Pikachu was at the battle between Red and Bruno, so he should know everything that happened. But it didn't say anything to Yellow, who could read its mind, meaning that it's not because it didn't want to, but most likely due to the trauma, it created a mental block, blocking out its memories. And it also explains why Pikachu's scar on its ear isn't healing. They eventually breach a place in the island where they can see Surge's battle with Bruno. However, they're being blocked by a weird screen, which doesn't allow the others to see or hear them. Surge and Bill get into battle with Bruno and his team of Flying-type Pokemon. Bill and Surge are doing their best, but things are getting really close and Yellow and Blaine want to step in, but they can't break down the magic screen. Bruno can sense them trying to break it down and yells at them not to interfere with the battle. But of course, Yellow and Blaine say screw that and continue attacking. Bruno then gets his Onix to appear and constrain the two, getting back to the battle. Bill and Surge notice Bruno shouting, realizing that they must have set up an arena specifically not to allow interruptions. However, things aren't over for these two, as they come up with a plan to lure Bruno away whilst dropping Pokeballs on the floor. Once they reach a dead end, they reveal their Pokemon, being Electrode and Execute. And the special thing about these two Pokemon are their Egg Bomb and Self-Destruct attacks, which they detonate straight on Onix's back, causing it to shake around and drop everyone off. Bill and Surge manage to survive though, using Surge's infamous electromagnetic cage. As for what happened to Bruno, however, they can't really tell. So because of that, we'll be taking a break from this battle and now going to Cinnabar Island, where the junior trainer is taking care of the super nerd in this Pokemon. He mentions that the nerd's been in a coma for weeks now, but suddenly he wakes up right on cue, and one of the first things he sees is the image of Red's ice shell, trying to figure out how he managed to escape it, revealing when he went down to Mount Moon, Red was still frozen, and that's where he found a scrap of his torn glove. He did actually try to break the ice with Marowak's Bone Club, but it didn't even crack it. He shows the junior trainer some photos he took at the scene, and the trainer mentions in the background of one of the photos is a shadow. Now we head back to Cerise Island, but not to Bill and Surge's battle, but instead to Koga and Blue's, whose battle isn't actually over as Agatha still has some gas in her tank, hyping herself up with a traditional villain monologue, giving us a much needed flashback on why she has a grudge against Professor Oak. Years ago at the Indigo Plateau, Oak was competing for title of the champion, but he's stopped in the hallways by Agatha, who asks him why he left their research group. Oak replies saying that they've become inhumane with their research, instead only focusing on trying to make Pokemon do as they say. The two have a little tussle and Oak explains he's going to do his own research and create a Pokemon encyclopedia in order to help strengthen the bonds between humans and Pokemon alike. Later, the two meet again in the finals, for a battle that lasted over 8 hours, with Oak barely coming out on top. And because of his humiliation and disrespect, this put Agatha on a quest for revenge. Now back in the present, she sends her Gengar to follow Blue and Koga's shadows. The two trainers have noticed no matter how much they walk, they always end up going to the same place as they're going in circles, with one of the key standouts being Koga's Arbok's cut-off tail. But on their loop, they've noticed that Agatha is nowhere to be seen. Koga then says that he feels his energy being sucked out by something, and Gengar begins to make its move. Blue and Koga try to fight the shadow Pokemon, but they can't keep up with a Pokemon hiding in their shadows. Blue tries calling out his whole team in order to focus on attack, but that doesn't work either, as the more bodies around, the more shadows Gengar can hide in. So Blue returns his team and runs away from Koga with a plan in mind, using conversion on his Porygon to make it immune to Gengar's slashing attacks, whilst Koga uses his coughing to make fumes from its mouth. Whilst this battle takes place on Cerise Island, the gym leaders are struggling on mainland Kanto as Lance's Dragon Army is now heading for the unprotected cities. And with them being unable to contact the people on Cerise Island, Misty commands Starmie to draw a message in the sky. We now head back to Surge and Bill's battle, who have found out that Bruno is still alive, and this time his eyes show true murderous intent. Surge ends up getting pulled down by Hitmonlee, but he's fortunately saved by his Magneton and their magnets. Bruno, however, does the unthinkable, commanding his Hitmonlee to stretch even more and kick the Magneton away. But just as Surge is about to meet his end, he's saved by a vine, and the spoon in his shirt begins to bend towards a smoky area, where you guessed it, we get to see our best boy and former main character, Red, alive in the flesh. Red wastes no time in proving why he's the champion, by disarming Hitmonlee with Sweet Scent and pulling Surge back to safety. Yellow and Blaine see Red, but no matter what they do, they can't get through the mirror, and Blaine notices that the explosions from earlier must have disrupted the caves, as he can hear water coming their way. As the two get washed away by a massive torrent, Yellow's hat comes off, revealing a ponytail. But before any questions can be asked, a tsunami of water pushes them down even deeper into the caves. Checking back in with the gym leaders, Erica's managed to contact Misty through phone and tells her that she's noticed that the Pokemon are only attacking cities with gyms, and mainly the gym leaders themselves, meaning what they're after is the gym leaders' badges, with Misty telling Starmie to add this to the message. Now back on the island, Lane wakes Yellow up and asks questions, but Yellow says they can't answer right now, and to make a bad situation worse, she's lost her sketchbook and Red's Pokedex. Oh yeah, I'm also going to be using female pronouns for Yellow, since we've got the reveal that she's actually a girl now. Lane accepts Yellow's wishes and says that they probably can't leave this island until the Elite Four are defeated, lighting a torch with his Growlithe. A voice then mocks them, and Yellow uses Pikachu's flash to light the area, revealing their opponent to be the Dragon Master himself, Lance. Lane tells Yellow not to worry as he'll be taking on Lance by himself, but she should still watch the match carefully. Lance starts things off with his favorite, Hyper Beam, but Blaine is completely protected by Mewtwo, who catches the beam with no issues. However, Lance isn't scared though, breaking open the roof of the cave in order to have a proper battle. Mewtwo is doing perfectly fine at holding Lance back, but the issue is Mewtwo's power puts a strain on Blaine's body, meaning this unstoppable duo is held back by a time limit. Just like the fusions in Dragon Ball, Mewtwo uses its deadly Psy-Wave, but it only helps Lance's attack as he switches into an Aerodactyl with its sharp wings, forcing Mewtwo to bust out its iconic Spoon. The two Pokemon clash aggressively, and although Blaine wants to move back, he can't, as if the two separate, he'll be causing trouble for Mewtwo, saying that for this battle they'll only have 3 minutes left. Blaine tells his plan to Yellow, being that they'll destroy Lance's Pokeballs so he can't bring out his team, allowing Yellow to help in the fight. And whilst Yellow distracts Lance, Mewtwo breaks his Pokeballs. This attack is successful, but Blaine faints. Yellow thinks things are over, but Lance isn't done just yet, as unfortunately for them, Lance's Pokemon aren't even inside their Pokeballs. Instead, they were hiding underground. And with his full force Dragon team by his side and Blaine defeated, no one can stop Lance. Mewtwo wants to help out, but it can't risk Blaine's life, returning to its Pokeball, meaning now it's time for the hero to do hero things. As Yellow steps up and challenges Lance with her full team, Lance laughs at Yellow's puny team, noting that only one of them is evolved. He then flees to the top of the island, with Yellow chasing after him, bringing along Mewtwo and his Pokeball. Before they can get to battling though, Lance reveals that Yellow isn't the only one with healing powers, as he heals his Pokemon's wounds just like Yellow does, making her realize that Green must have knew about this, which is why she sent her specifically to go on this quest. She explains to Mewtwo that in the Viridian Forest, once every few years, a child is born possessing mysterious powers, and Yellow and Lance both fall under this category, which begins to make her nervous at the thought of fighting against Lance, but Mewtwo and her team reassure her that they can win. At the peak of the island lies a volcano, which is still active, and because Lance hid his Pokemon underground, it's even close to erupting. And to test the waters even more, Lance has his Dragonite attack the ground in order for it to spew lava and falling rocks of magma at Yellow, and she realizes this is exactly what Blue and Blaine were training for. She has her team attack Dragonite, but their attacks do no damage. Yellow says she won't give up however, knowing that the cities will be destroyed if she can't beat Lance here, but Lance corrects her, saying that even if they're destroyed, they'll be rebuilt for his perfect utopia. Yellow calls him out though, saying whilst it's true that people have done selfish stuff to Pokemon, he shouldn't destroy the entire human race because of it. In his quest, he's not only hurt humans, but also Pokemon as well, explaining that the power that they have shouldn't be used for destruction, instead it should be used for healing. Finishing off her speech by saying that the person who first introduced her to Pokemon told her that if you care for Pokemon with a kind and gentle heart, they'll always be your friend. All this speech does, however, is hit a nerve for Lance, as he unleashes a Fire Blast onto Yellow. Whilst Yellow's getting burnt to a crisp, let's go check in on a battle we haven't seen in a while, with Sabrina and Green versus Lorelei. Our heroes are really on the back foot as Sabrina slips, and is struggling to hold up a deadweight body. Lorelei says she should just give up on Green, but Sabrina rejects this, saying that she made a pact that she promises she'll keep. Lorelei then hits them both with Pound, sending them flying, but Green wakes up just in time to have her Blastoise use its water cannons to save them. Lorelei asks Green why she got in her way back then, and so Green explains, saying that after the Pokemon League, she was searching for the people who abducted her, when she got a lead from an unknown helper that told her of a trainer named Lance who was working on controlling a giant flying Pokemon. But not only that, because of his powers, only another trainer from Viridian Forest can combat him. At that moment, Green saw Pikachu running away from Hitmonlee. Unfortunately though, she wasn't able to catch up with them, but she did manage to see how badly injured Pikachu was, knowing that something must have happened to Red. As she was searching in the forest, she stumbled across Yellow, asking if she saw Pikachu. Yellow hasn't and asked Rattata if he's seen it either, which he hasn't, making Green realize Yellow has the power her helper was talking about, as a fateful gust of wind blows by, showing a page of Yellow's sketchbook that features Red. Green is surprised by her luck and asks Yellow if she knows Red, and Yellow explains that he helped her once in the forest. But since then, she hasn't seen Red. So Green explains she's Red's friend and Red may be in trouble right now. However, she has the power to save him, asking her if she'll join in the search, which of course Yellow agrees to. And this is pretty much the backstory of how Yellow got her mission from Green, with the finishing touch being that Green gave Yellow a hat in order to mask her identity from her attackers. Back to the battle, Green reveals her trump card, being Clefable, who uses Minimize to steal the Ice Doll's back. However, as Clefable's running back, it trips and drops the doll, breaking it in two, as Green's arm ends up getting torn off. Despite the pain, Green says this was according to her plan, as now Sabrina can fight without her in the way. Or that's what I would say, but Green's hand begins to move and constrain Lorelei and Jinx, revealing it was actually just Ditto, with Green getting up and showing her arm is perfectly fine. In fact, it was just hiding inside her jacket that she was wearing. The two trainers complement each other in their skills, and Lorelei regrets losing this battle, hoping their plan to save the Pokemon doesn't go to waste, before passing out. Green says that she has a good goal, but was fighting the wrong battle, just like she did in the past. Green wants to wake up Sabrina, but she's already awake, getting angry at Green for chaining her to a Ditto all this time and tricking her. But Green just says she has to fool her to fool Lorelei. With one battle completed, let's head over to the next, which is our GOAT Red versus Bruno. Bruno starts to get headaches upon seeing Red, and Bill warns Red about fighting Bruno as his Hitmonlee destroyed his house before. Red, however, has everything figured out, asking Surge to let this be a one-on-one. Surge allows him to battle, and Bruno wonders why he has no memory of Hitmonlee destroying his house, laughing at the fact that Hitmonlee was being used without his knowledge and his constant headaches and memory loss, saying none of that matters now as he finally has his dream opponent, and they can have a pure, fair fight. Red knows for this battle he can't blindly switch his Pokemon around, otherwise he'll get caught by Hitmonchan's elemental punches. So instead, he sends out his ace, Eevee, whilst revealing that he did in fact have the elemental stones of Vermilion City. With Eevee's ability to evolve and de-evolve, he manages to counter all of Bruno's attacks. And this, combined with the stone's ability to never lose their power, allows Red to get the upper hand. Bruno then makes things a double battle, having Machamp fight against Poliwrath. Bruno's Machamp then takes off its spell, which apparently powers it up, sending Eevee down into the venomous water. Red has Poliwrath fight with Water Gun, but it can't match against Machamp's new strength. Suddenly though, Eevee jumps out of the puddle left behind by Water Gun, revealing it used Acid Armor to hide. Red then changes Eevee into Jolteon to finish Bruno off with Pin Missile. And with that last attack, Bruno lost, claiming to be beaten, as well as making the grand reveal that he didn't actually care about Lance's plans, saying that humans and Pokemon can work together to get strong. After all, this is how he's always lived, and will continue to live, taking his leave and thanking Red for the battle. Surge then drops Bill down to Red, saying that now that Bruno's defeated, he's going to meet up with Koga and Sabrina. Bill then notices a path that's opened up after Jolteon's Pin Missile attack, and there lies Yellow's sketchbook and Red's Pokedex. Red's confused about everything that's going on, but Bill manages to explain everything to him. So the two get on Red's bike and make their way to the center of the island, with Bill asking Red how he managed to escape from his ice shell along with getting the evolution stones. And Red reveals that he actually got help to escape the ice, and the person who helped him also gave him the evolution stones. Back on the mainland, the Pokemon that were attacking the gyms throw away the badges that they stole, and Erica notes that they must be trying to find a specific badge, and Misty mentions this is exactly what Team Rocket did in the past. Now we can go to our final battle of the trio, being Blue, who's realized that Gengar is reacting to sound in order to attack them. He then notices the smoke from Koga's coughing, understanding his plan. Both trainers remain still and silent, as Koga whispers to his Pokemon a plan, before shouting now, allowing Gengar to attack. But the body it attacked was just Arbok's tail that begun to move, allowing Blue to strike and take down the Gengar. Koga praises Blue for understanding the message in coughing smoke, knowing that Arbok can move its tail even when it's cut off. With Gengar defeated though, now the two have to split ways. However, Koga joined their partnership, wanting a rematch one day. Blue then spots Agatha, demanding she explain everything that happened between her and Oak, which he does so, before telling Blue that he shouldn't be focusing on her though, instead looking at something more important, being the message that Misty's relaying in the sky. The message explains the situation going on in the mainland, and Agatha takes the chance to prepare a getaway, telling Blue that once Lance collects all 8 badges, he'll become unstoppable. Blue's Pokedex then begins to start beeping, indicating that the dex holders are all close together, so Blue has to make his way into the cave to reunite with everyone. Red and Bill are also doing the same, and Red says that the person who helped him also gave him the Spoon of Destiny, and that's how he managed to find his way to this island. Red's Pokedex begins to beep as well, as Bill tells Red to go on ahead so he can cycle faster. And now with all the small battles done, we can finally get into the main one, being Yellow versus Lance. Yellow's in a bad position though, as she's surrounded by lava. The only thing keeping her safe is Pikachu's substitute surfboard. They try to surf away from Lance, but he can catch them easily with Dragonite, and he praises Yellow for holding her own, explaining his Dragonite have 4 powers: to traverse the skies, to change the direction of their attacks, to control the weather, and lastly linking together to attack. And in all of their battles, Yellow's pushed him into using all 4. However, this compliment only turns into a mocking, as Lance explains that his Dragonairs only add up to a fraction of his power. Now that he has his full team, there's nothing she can do. Yellow continues to flee, thinking back to what Blaine said about Lance's fighting style, so she creates a whirlpool of lava, just like Mewtwo's Psywave. Because of the current, Lance starts to get sucked in, but he doesn't back down, charging straight at Yellow and into the lava. Yellow can't believe her eyes, but she doesn't have time to process things, as instead she has to focus on escaping out of the volcano, which she does with the help of her team. But things can never be this easy. As bubbles start to appear, Lance makes his presence known, being surrounded by his dragons in a bubble of lava. The bubbles start to disappear before attacking Yellow, breaking her arm. Caterpie makes a cast for Yellow, and Yellow realizes that Lance is using Bubble Beam. But not only that, combining it with the power of science and light, he can make the bubbles look like they're invisible.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice.
So you're
Yellow runs around and has Caterpie create threads in order to counter the bubbles, whispering a plan to her team, with Yellow's Pokemon managing to pop the bubbles before they can reach them, and distracting Lance so that Graveler can throw Doduo into Lance's main bubble with Drill Peck. However, the plan fails, simply due to Yellow not having enough power. Yellow's about to be finished off, but at the last moment she's saved by an unknown man. She thanks the man for his help, but explains that only trainers from Viridian can defeat Lance. But fortunately, this man is also from Viridian, being leader of Team Rocket and the 8th gym leader, Giovanni. Yellow reads Pikachu's memories to learn that the trainer is Giovanni. However, he's on the side of good this time, using Sandstorm to break the smaller bubbles, whilst Nidoking tries to break the big bubble. However, even it doesn't have enough power. Giovanni drops a Pokeball that rolls out of sight and bursts open, allowing Beedrill to Twin Needle directly through the bubble. Lance gets dropped, falling into the thread made by Yellow. The two trainers talk to each other, and it's revealed they actually know each other from before, with Lance being a former student under Giovanni. Suddenly though, the island is filled with a light in the shape of a massive bird. Giovanni's chest begins to glow as his badge rips out. Lance breaks out of his threads and reveals that he already had the other 7 gym badges hidden down in the caves. And now with Giovanni being here, he finally has all 8, allowing him to execute his main plot, with Ceres Island actually being one massive badge energy amplifier, hence the stone shrines. And with the energy from all 8 badges accumulating into one, a giant bird is created, which Lance calls the legendary spirit. Back down in the caves, Sabrina notices that the battles are finished and teleports away. Green is a bit down that she didn't get to use her ace in the hole, Snubbull, but she doesn't have time to waste as she notices the spirit roaming the skies, chasing after it. Yellow and Giovanni are in shock at the spirit, and Giovanni even runs away. Lance heads up to the legendary Pokemon in order to have it join his team, leaving Dragonite to finish off Yellow. Yellow pleads with the Pokemon to stop, and it falls down, with Yellow realizing that having it wait underground in the lava must have made it so exhausted. The Pokemon tries to follow after Lance, and Yellow grabs onto it, reading its mind, which reveals that this Pokemon is willing to do anything for Lance because he's willing to do anything for the Pokemon. Yellow understands this but knows it's not the way, as people and Pokemon really can live together, resonating with her team. Once at the peak of the sky, Lance tries to stop Yellow with Hyper Beam, but Yellow blocks the attack with Metapod. Now that she doesn't have the Pokedex, she can't stop her Pokemon from evolving, asking for their full strength in order to save the world, finally allowing her Pokemon to evolve, with Metapod evolving once more into Butterfree, allowing Yellow to fly. The two trainers then battle it out, with Lance saying that in just a while everything will be all over, and in the heat of the battle, Yellow's cast begins to come undone, reaching down to the top of the mountain. Yellow reads Pikachu's mind, realizing that its lost memories are starting to come back, and Yellow learns that the only way to defeat the legendary Pokemon is to blast it away with energy just as strong. Down below, Red, Green, and Blue all cross paths, allowing them to have a quick reunion, though they have to act quickly as they find Blaine along with a thread from Yellow. The 3 trainers put their power together just like they did in Silphco, but direct their energy up through the thread. Yellow feels the strength from her friends and their Pokemon, channeling it all to Pikachu, who unleashes a powerful Mega Volt at Lance and the legendary Pokemon. The attack hits so hard that we see part of Lance's childhood and what he had to suffer through, but he gets quickly blown away. Giovanni watches as this happens from down below, as flowers begin to sprout on the ground. As he leaves, he gets stopped by Serge and Sabrina, who want to join his side again, but he refuses them, telling them that because they had to work with the heroes, this is more than enough proof that Team Rocket isn't strong enough, and so he'll be leaving on a training journey on his own to realize his path, telling them to go back to their gyms. The power from Megavolt then reaches over to mainland Kanto, making the army of Pokemon lose their power, and Erika realizes the power of destruction that Lance intended to use has been turned into the power of life. Yellow thanks the legendary Pokemon for working alongside of them before she passes out, allowing Red to catch her. Yellow then wakes up in the middle of a forest, but Pikachu isn't with her, so she and Ratty search for him, but they run into Dodie, who is now a Dodrio, along with Omni, Gravi, and Kitty, who have all evolved. They lead her down a path where she finds Pikachu, but the Pokemon runs away from them until they meet Red. Yellow remembers that Pikachu actually belongs to Red, but because they were together for so long, she had forgotten, reminiscing on all the times they had together. Before waking up, revealing it all to be a dream, as now she's heading back to mainland Kanto along with everyone else. Red tells her that Lance got blasted away and the legendary Pokemon flew off to the west. Lane is surprised at Yellow's power to evolve her Pokemon, with Graveler even evolving, who usually only evolves through trade. Bill then speaks to Green about Yellow's secret, and mentions how everyone knows about it apart from Red, asking why isn't she telling him? And Green only replies saying, it's much more fun waiting for him to realize himself. Red thanks Yellow for everything, and asks Pikachu what he wants to do, continue traveling with Yellow, or come back to him, joking that they should all just live together. Which brings our story to an end. With the Kanto region saved once again, and the Elite Four defeated, everyone can start working together to rebuild the destroyed cities, along with Team Rocket's former triad going back to their respective gyms, apart from Koga, who disappeared like Giovanni. However, where one story ends, another begins, as we now see Green make a phone call to her helper, saying she can't tell if a giant legendary was the Pokemon that kidnapped her or not, but what she does know is that it disappeared west to Johto, so she wants him to continue investigating, saying that she's counting on him. This him being Silver, who's currently in Johto. Who is this Silver kid, and what's going on in Johto? Well, find out next time in Pokemon Adventures. Next time, I'm going to be covering Pokemon Adventures Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So as usual, make sure to like and subscribe for more Pokemon Adventures Explained videos, as well as anything else to do with the Pokemon manga. And let me know in the comment section down below if you like this arc, and if so, do you like it more than the first one? But with all that said and done, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Hey there everyone, welcome back once again to the complete story of Pokemon Adventures. In the previous 2 episodes, we covered the entire first generation, meaning now we've only got 8 more generations to go. Yeah, still a pretty long way. Either way, today we'll be knocking out Generation 2 by covering the Gold, Silver, and Crystal arc of Pokemon Adventures. And if you thought the other 2 arcs were good, well this time you're in for a major treat. Because if you ask me, this is easily one of the best arcs. So let's get straight into things. But before that, if you haven't watched the other 2 parts, I suggest you do so before this one.
I'm running to have a better head. So now just, okay, swallow your fears and battle them head on. Okay, filling with pride I'll fight until they're gone. Okay, I may not know what lies ahead, but these hard emotions surely they can spread. I will battle fierce opponents head to head.
Our story begins in the Johto region's New Bark Town, where we see a lady cooking food with an Aipom. She tells the Pokemon to go wake up its trainer, who's a young boy sleeping surrounded by Pokemon. The boy's pretty slow at getting up, but his Pokemon all help him out. And after eating some food, the boy and his Pokemon all head out. Also in New Bark Town is the Professor Elm, a Pokemon researcher who's currently researching work done by Professor Oak. He also mentions how a year has passed since the Yellow arc. By his side are 3 Pokeballs containing the Johto starters. Now, at the end of the day, the boy has returned home and is playing billiards while listening to the radio, when suddenly his radio begins to stop working. The boy then notices someone sneaking in his yard, so he goes outside to confront the person. But this person just turns out to be a youngster named Joey, who claims he hasn't done anything wrong. Instead, the issue is that his bag and the boy's antenna have been stolen by a Murkrow, who's currently nesting in a tree. The boy then grabs his billiard stick and shoots a Pokeball containing an Aipom into the sky. Aipom jumps out of his Pokeball once atop the tree and ties a rope around the item before throwing them off the tree. Turns out, this rope was connected to the boy, lifting him up to the tree and allowing him to catch the Murkrow. And with some help from Aipom, he manages to get down safely. The boy then introduces himself to Joey, and we learn his name is Gold. Joey then thinks to himself it would have been bad if he lost the bag, as he was meant to deliver it to Professor Elm. Since it's late, Joey stays at Gold's house, and the next day the two head out together, as Gold learned from Joey that he has connections to Professor Oak, who's actually the person who tasked him to deliver the bag to Professor Elm. This interests Gold, but not for the reason you may think, because he only cares about Professor Oak because he works with DJ Mary in the radio station. So Gold decides to take the opportunity and deliver the bag with Joey, hoping it can lead to him meeting DJ Mary. As the two walk through New Bucktown, they spot a man trying to swindle people in a prize game. So Gold steps up to the plate and with his keen eye exposes the man's scam. However, whilst he was doing this, he didn't use his keen eye on his bag, allowing his Pokemon to get stolen. Eventually, Gold does notice this, but it's already too late. And Joey realizes that the thief must have been trying to steal his bag, but mistook it for Gold. As he further explains that inside his bag wasn't only Pokemon, but also valuable information from Professor Oak. Because the thieves will probably realize their mistake soon enough, the two of them head to Professor Elm's lab as soon as possible. At said lab, the professor hears the door open and goes to greet Joey, only to find no one outside, so he heads back in. However, looming over him is this mysterious boy, who we actually know the identity of, being Silver, the boy who was helping Green in the Yellow Arc. Taking inspiration from Green, Silver sneakily steals Totodil's Pokeball when Professor Elm isn't looking, then goes back into hiding. Elm turns around and starts to panic as he notices Totodile is now missing. At the same time as this, Gold and Joey have arrived at the lab, and Gold comes up with a plan. Instead of entering through the front door like a regular person, they'll try to catch the thief by going through the second floor, as chances are that's what a thief would try to do. And it turns out just like he planned, as Gold runs into Silver, who's trying to escape from the second floor. Silver acts quick though and jumps away, and Professor Elm thinks that Gold stole his Totodile. Gold of course denies the accusations, but in the confusion, Silver takes a chance to knock Professor Elm out with Icy Whip. Joey hears what's going on, but slips on the frozen floor when he enters, knocking him out as well. Gold prepares for battle, managing to outsmart Silver, and demands that he returns his bag. Surprisingly though, Silver doesn't know what he's talking about. Gold knows that Silver's pretty skilled, so he grabs a Pokeball from Elm's table in order to fight against Silver, the Pokemon being Cyndaquil, who's currently angry at Silver for taking his friend. Gold sympathizes with the Pokemon, and the two agree to work together to battle. Nearby the lab lurks Team Rocket, who are actually the ones who stole Gold's bag. They look through it, hoping to see their spoils, but they realize that they stole the wrong bag. So they throw away Gold's bag, and one of the Pokeballs holding Poliwag ends up rolling out of the bag and into the sea. Meanwhile, Gold and Silver are continuing their fight, and Silver manages to escape from the window. Gold stops him in his tracks though with Cyndaquil's fire, burning Silver's hand. He then traps him in a ring of fire and tries to interrogate Silver, noticing him trying to use a device behind his back. Suddenly though, Gold is attacked by an electric attack, shocking even Silver. Team Rocket then reveal themselves to be the one under this attack, explaining to Silver that they made a mistake grabbing the wrong bag. But whilst they're here, they may as well steal some more stuff from Professor Elm's lab, specifically the starter Pokemon that he's been researching. But Silver replies saying he's already taken Totodile and the boy has already taken Cyndaquil. So Team Rocket go for the attack, but Silver dispatches them with ease, forcing them to run away. A while later, Gold wakes up, only to be told he's gonna get arrested by the police. Fortunately though, Joey's around and has him covered, explaining to Gold that Professor Elm had to be hospitalized after injuring his hip. The police ask Gold about Silver and what did he look like, since he was the only one who saw his face, and Gold agrees to cooperate. So whilst everyone leaves, Gold picks up a glove that Silver